going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review, and this is our twice weekly-ish show where we review the Magic stories. And this time we are here for more of our review of the Streets of New Capenna stories. Specifically, we are here for the main story, episode 3, Tests, by Elise Kova. My quick review at the top of this one is I thought this story was fine. It didn't have a lot of what we usually look for in like metaphor and like kind of big sweeping themes. It was a story to advance the plot, and it did that in a pseudo-interesting way.
Okay. Yeah, I liked it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Not much more to say about it in a quick review.
You got it. So if those make it sound intriguing, if you are interested in checking that out for yourself before watching our review, the top link in the description down below will take you to this story so that you can read it for yourself or refresh your memory if it's been a little bit for you, but you have read it already. And then, of course, after you're done doing that, we would love it if you would come back here and continue joining us. And as always, any thoughts that you might have on this story, whether discussing it in comparison to what we've said, or talking about something that we might have missed, or just giving us your opinions in general, that's what the comment section down below is for.
Yes.
Now, before we get onto the full review itself, hi, welcome to the channel. If you're appreciating the things that we do around here, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you'll get notifications whenever any of our videos come out, or whenever we go live. Now, this is extremely important, because we are live every Monday and Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this channel. Mondays, we play MTG Arena. And this Monday, because this video will be coming out on a Monday, this Monday, today, we will be streaming on MTG Arena tonight for 2 hours. But that's not long enough, right? 2 hours on a Monday? And also, we will have already done, and in fact, the videos will already be on the channel, of us having opened pre-release packs, pre-release kits from Streets of New Capenna. You can see us opening those if you haven't already. And you should check that out, because that was an absolute blast. We got to go to our sponsor store, Champion Card Collector in Poughkeepsie, New York. Shoutouts and huge thanks to them for having us. So if you missed either, because we posted two, either of our videos from that event, you should definitely go check them out. I'm sure they'll be linked at the end, maybe up at the top, something like that in the iCard for you to check out, and you should. If you,
I'm the one that goes like this.
Yeah, I'm the one that goes like this. So definitely go check that out if you missed it. But almost more importantly, like I said, we're streaming tonight, but you know we're going to be playing Cube or Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. But what about Streets of New Capenna? Well, let me tell you, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday, the 26th, we, along with many other streamers, by the way, thanks to Wizards of the Coast, will be streaming the Streets of New Capenna Early Access event on MTG Arena. It is
back.
It's back. We had done many of these, and many amazing people joined us for many of those in the past. And then it took a break for a little while, and it was a little sad. And by that I mean I was a lot sad about the fact that we didn't get to do that for so many different reasons. But if you are new to our channel and to how we do things with regard to these events, because it's been a while, or if you need a refresher, we are going to stream starting as close to 11 a.m. Eastern as we are allowed. We will work within the bounds of technology as it stands. But we will start as soon as we can after 11, and then we will go until we cannot go anymore. So we have done 12-hour streams, 13, 14, 15. I'm not trying to break any records. It truly will just be like, okay, I'm exhausted. Right. We will now go to bed. But we will be here. If you have free time during the day and it is after 11 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday the 26th, you should be here for that event, and we are streaming live here on YouTube. There are many people who will be live over on Twitch, and again, if you're not going to watch us, you should watch somebody. Support these creators. Let Wizards know, since they are the ones gifting us these accounts, let them know that you want this event around, you like it, you love it, because that's how it can stick around. If it's lucrative for them, if it makes sense for them from a business perspective, they'll keep doing them. People loved them. It was tons of free advertising.
Right.
And then it went away for a while. And that, like I said, was upsetting. Not just for us because we didn't get to be sponsored anymore or whatever. That's not it. It was just so much fun to spend time with all of you. Right?
Right. And feel how it felt to, like, have the accomplishment of having been there, streaming the brand new set
Exactly.
for such a long period of time, interacting with the chat / the fans, basically.
Yeah.
And being able to just enjoy the brand new set when it was brand new.
Yeah. So, again, if you're unaware of how we do things around here, we will be streaming Streets of New Capenna Limited. That's sealed and or draft. Depends on what everybody wants at the time. Sometimes it just depends on what I want at the time. But, of course, I try to listen to what the majority of people want.
Well, we try to do sealed because sealed doesn't last.
Yes, but if we've done like 5 sealeds in a row, we will probably, venture into draft and see how that goes. But regardless, it will be limited all day. Again, there will be many other streamers who will be trying out brand new standard brews, etc. And we encourage you to go check them out if that's something you're looking for. We are not those people, and it wouldn't really be that enjoyable to watch us try.
Right.
So we will be here trying the new limited out. Again, we will be fresh off of pre-release weekend, so I will have done plenty of sealeds throughout the course of pre-release weekend. So depending on how I do during that, we will see. And obviously that means that we are filming this prior to pre-release weekend, but there's a lot of stuff going on, so we're trying to get ahead of the curve. But all of that being said, we would love for you, like we said, to subscribe, ring the bell. You'll get notifications whenever any of our videos come out and whenever we go live. We have other channels as well, linked down in the description box below. Video Games for All, Gluten Free for All that great stuff. Don't forget, likes and shares also go a massively long way. If you've got friends that would enjoy the early access event, let them know about it as well. Sorry, I needed to get that out, and I'm sorry if it was long-winded, but it's been a long time, so I want to make sure that people understand what that is.
Right.
Now, we are here to review a Magic story, so let's do that. We are here, like I said, Episode 3, Tests by Elise Kova.
Luckily, I feel like this one I don't have a ton to say about, at least.
Right. Well, like I said, there wasn't a lot of nuance to it. It was a story, it happened, and then it ended. And
right. It walked you through the process of the events of the story.
What I will say is that I thought that the method to the story was kind of interesting, somewhat unique, in that it gave you title cards basically for what areas Elspeth was in, because this was an Elspeth story start to finish. And it kind of said to you, okay, she's here, and then she's in Xander's office, and then she's on the streets of Metzio, and then she's back in Xander's office, then she's at this locale, back in Xander's office, blah, 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 over and over again, right? Because the tests were kind of tests of her loyalty, tests of her abilities, and kind of testing her worthiness to decide if she is worthy of knowing or earning some of the knowledge that Xander, the leader of the Maestros, and the Maestros in general had at their disposal. But really, kind of specifically Xander, because he didn't pull out a text and read to her from it, right? He just had that information from having gathered it all. And we're going to talk about that because that was an interesting thing. So the first note that I have here is a quote that we both had different thoughts on and we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So that quote is, Elspeth was certain he, meaning Xander, so Elspeth was certain he knew something about the truths of New Capenna and the Phyrexians. Why else would he hoard such knowledge and relics? And so I don't know if you want to take this first or you want me to, but you had thoughts on this.
Okay, yeah. When you read that, I just thought to myself, of course he does. Because of course he does gather these relics and collect them. Not, of course he does have this knowledge that she's assuming he has.
Right.
Because I feel like he's just a rich dude. He's just a rich dude.
He is.
And rich people sometimes will just collect things to have them. Because they like them, or because they think it will make them look good to other people, or because it's a status symbol and kind of, you know, or maybe they just think it's interesting, but maybe don't actually know that much about it.
Right, it just like looks cool to them, so they're like, I like this. And meanwhile, other like historians are like, this is like such an important thing to history, and they're like, oh, really? I just thought it was cool. You know, like they just don't care.
Right, but I'm very much like in the boat of people who believe that things like that belong in museums, not belong in the hands of people who can afford to buy them.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of thing upsets me.
Right. Well, ironically, they run a museum.
Right.
So,
yes.
You know.
So that's fine.
Fine.
Right. But my point is, like, it makes sense. To me, it fits with like a parallel to reality of, oh, okay, so this person is rich and has power, so they're going to like buy up these things that intrigue them or whatever, even if like the history behind them isn't really something they're knowledgeable about.
Right. So you thought that, and then we kind of talked about it, because you, again, like Amy said, when I read that line, she was like, of course, you know, of course he would collect these things, then this is why. And I was like, oh, see, I thought slightly differently. And this is one of those instances where it's like, you thought one thing, I thought another, but it wasn't like, well, you're clearly wrong, I thought it was this. It was just like, oh, that's a cool way of looking at it. What about this? And like both of us were like, huh, like liked each other's way of thinking. What I thought of was a little bit more sinister, I suppose, and to bring up, I guess the time that I've heard it the most is with regard to the Nazis. But it really is just any like totalitarian force that like takes over, whether it be specifically like a genocide type event, or just in general of taking over a group of people or an area, that when you do so, you attempt, an authoritarian leader will attempt to take away the culture and remove all of those culturally important items, like relics, like knowledge, because then as the generations move on, it's easier to control them. It's easier to make them feel helpless, hopeless, because they
don't have those connections to their ancestors or
their community, their culture.
Right, the other people of their country, maybe.
Right.
It depends on the specificity of what you're talking about.
And I feel like we haven't heard about this particular aspect a ton for this set or for this setting, but the mob is pretty well known, at least stereotypically, if not based in fact, for like protection rackets and things like that. Going into local businesses, going up to individuals and saying, hey, look, you know, you have a really nice shop here. Be a damn shame if some people came in and messed this place up. But if you pay us a nominal fee every month, every week, whatever it is, we will make sure that this place is safe. This place is watched over by our people and you're protected. And if not, weirdly, they're the same people that would destroy your place of business, right? But again, that's somewhat of a stereotypical thing. Now, if you have a community around you, and these people are, the mob is trying to come and do these things to you, you may not be as susceptible to that, because you would have this backup, these people to support you. But if you're not in touch with your community, with your culture, with your background, maybe you don't have that support. Right. Maybe you don't have that. And so the people that would be coming to seek that protection money might be the ones who would try to remove that knowledge and that culture and that history from you for that reason. So that was just something that I thought of when reading that line for another possibility. Like I said, I don't dislike what Amy was saying, and I don't think you're wrong in any capacity. I'm just saying that's what I thought of was something, what I would say, drastically different.
Yeah, it's drastically different. And drastically better, I think. I think it's almost clearly more applicable to the story.
Okay.
Or the just the subject matter, you know?
Okay. Well, and it seems like Xander wants to know the same information that Elspeth does, right? He says, this is the information that I am looking for as well, right? I want to know who the angels were fighting, what this force was or whatever. And he doesn't know that information, and he wants to. And especially with regard to Halo. Halo being the last gift from the angels, and presumably, right? Because this is what I think. This isn't necessarily what he said, but I may be reading into it. But I imagine that if you understand more of the history, especially since the Halo came from the angels, maybe in his mind, that's a way to figure out how to get more Halo.
Right.
Right? Like if that's the gift from the angels and you now understand the angels, well, maybe one immediately leads into the other, right? That would make sense.
Well, it wouldn't be immediate,
No.
I feel like he'd still have to go to the angels that existed and implore.
Yeah, or try to find, go down to the surface that isn't really utilized anymore and find some locales that the angels used to frequent that may be buried away or something. Who can say? Who's to know?
Fuels.
Yeah, dig up all those dead angels like dinosaurs, right, and turn them into oil. I also wanted to point out, I found it interesting that this story helped to ground it a bit. I always appreciate when you can have a bit of a timeline, because after episode 2, Elspeth is now in the museum with the maestros. And they talked about when Angelo brought Elspeth here, she got to look around and learn a bunch of things and blah, blah, blah. And it could have been 2 days later. No, it says, or Elspeth says, that she'd been there for, quote, weeks. That could be as little as 2, could be as many as 18. You know what I mean?
Right.
It could be any range, but I imagine 2-3 weeks or so, especially because, and this was maybe a problem that I had with the story, maybe not, but Elspeth in episode 2, which is how she ends up meeting Angelo and Xander and blah, 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 she ends up getting into a fight with some of the enforcers that come to rough up the owner of the cleaners that she was working for. Now, Elspeth, being sure of herself and knowledgeable that she's a good fighter and wanting to be a heroic person, not that she wants to be a heroic person, but that she knows what's right and wants to protect this man, right? This innocent man from this assault, she steps up at 3-to-1 odds against these people that she has no knowledge of their capabilities or whatever. And so that's the kind of person that Elspeth is. How that immediately translates to stealth work for the maestros, I don't see that connection.
No.
And yet, not only does she do stealth work in following this this one person for them, the second test or mission that she had. The first one was to deliver a package, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. But she had to deliver a package, then she had to follow somebody, then she had to make a dead drop, right? She had to bring Halo to a particular spot, put it in a bag, and then walk away. And then by the end of the story, she's infiltrating the cabarets as a spy.
Right.
In what world does she have these abilities? She, in fact, when she's doing...
She's a planeswalker, so she has them in every world.
Except when she's doing the dead drop of the halo, Vivian confronts her
Right.
very briefly and is like,
She's like, I can seriously tell this is a drop.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
not only that, but she's like, you are not cut out for this.
Right.
And then yet, like, literally the next thing that she does is infiltrate the Cabarettis and is perfectly believable. No issues whatsoever. Like, it just seems so weird to me. It's like, that's not Elspeth. At least it doesn't seem like it to me. But again, and I will say this once very briefly, if you've seen our other episodes from this series, you will understand. I'm just going to try to move on after I say it. But we don't know her character because we didn't get a Theros Beyond Death story.
Right.
So that's a lot tougher. So maybe that's the direction they're trying to have her go, is that she's like a rogue now? Like, she seemed much more like a warrior or a barbarian type in terms of how she was fighting these three, that like she just picks up a piece of rebar and fights off these three after pseudo retreating, but really like it was like a strategic retreat kind of a thing. And then even like kind of chastises herself because she put all those people in danger in the street when she was running away. Like they could have been attacked or hit with like a stray bullet or whatever you want to call it. So regardless, now she's doing like stealthy following missions to like keep an eye on somebody, but like not let that person know she's following them. She's doing dead drops, deliveries, and now infiltrating another criminal organization for a different criminal organization. It seemed very counter to what you would expect based on her character so far, even in these stories themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, we talk about this in practically every episode of JaAR, but correct characterization is much less of a thing now that the people who are writing the story don't know the characters that exist, yet they need to write them.
Yeah. Well, and it would be hard to know Elspeth. Like, you'd have to have the person read the Theros stories, right, up to Journey into Nyx, and then the, like, text description of Elspeth from Theros Beyond Death, although maybe the people from Wizards could explain to these authors, to Elise Kova, as an example, okay, this is what the story would have been, right? It seemed, because again, it seemed like they had written the story and then got rid of it because people hated War of the Spark Forsaken so much. But regardless, let us know your thoughts truly on do you think this is just the new Elspeth? Do you think that Elspeth has always had these abilities and we're just like we don't have all the information? Because that's definitely a possibility. It just felt wrong to me, that's all. So, there was a moment that I really actually enjoyed with Xander talking to Elspeth, and Xander kind of says to her, well, I want you to do more things for me. You're looking for more information. I'm looking for more assistance. So, you know, I'm going to give you more responsibilities now. Or, there's the door.
Right.
And to me, and said, no ill will if you choose to leave now. And you seemed a little skeptical of that. You were like, To me, I mean, I've seen that moment in media before. To me, that seemed perfectly genuine. Yeah, where he was like,
if it's a criminal organization and she's aware of that and she knows too much, she's gonna leave, and really all that means is she's gonna be followed home and killed.
Well, but that's why I said, I disagree that she had gotten that far yet.
Okay.
She was just looking around the museum, cataloging items that he owned. That was all she had done up to that point. Once he was getting ready to give her the tasks of dead drop, deliver this package, you know, follow this person, whatever, that would be the line. Where I think you're absolutely right. The only way out is in a pine box, right?
Yeah.
That's classic mobster, but I think that was Xander saying, like, this is your last chance. You're either in or you're out. And you can make a clean break, but if you wait past this moment, it will no longer be a clean break. Right. Like, that's how I took it, right? Was that way of like, I'm going to let you in further into this organization. But the second you step over that line, you can't step back across it again.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to get shot. Right? You know, something to that effect. Shot, stabbed, killed, whatever.
Right.
Fitted with a pair of cement shoes.
Right. Personally, I don't think mobsters are quite that nice. To say, hey, here's your moment. You've done a bunch for me already. You know some things. I'm going to let you leave if you want to.
Well, I think...
I just feel like that seems a bit unrealistic.
I think that was the point, right? I don't know that she had done a lot for him. She was doing museum work. Like, you would, as a mobster, you would hire a random person off the street to do that work. And then if they started looking in places they weren't supposed to or asking too many questions, maybe then you'd knock them off, right?
Yeah, but I mean, isn't it known by the public that they're a crime family?
I mean, but if it is, there are 5 families. They're the ones that run the city. Like, nobody's looking at the crime families and being like, well, somebody's got to stop them from what they're doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're running the city. So, like,
think of that.
like, the only way that you're stopping the maestros is by appealing to one of the other 4 families to try to horn in on something. And so the maestros would be... It would kind of behoove the maestros to make sure that nobody had too much information, similar to what's now going on with the Cabarettis with Elspeth there, right? Elspeth is trying to find out information about the font so that she can bring it back to Xander and the Maestros, and then Xander and the Maestros can steal it for themselves or whatever. Little do they know, the adversary is trying to do the same thing, Ob Nixilis. And so, like, that is seemingly the crux of the remaining 2 episodes, right? But very interesting that, you know, I just liked that moment in the story because I felt like it was genuine. I felt like Xander was really like, okay, I'm going to pull back this curtain. If you don't want me to pull back this curtain, you're going to want to walk that way because this is your last chance. Once I pull this curtain back, you're not leaving ever again. So, but of course, Elspeth is very interested in getting information on the Phyrexians. She keeps saying, like, to bring it back to Ajani. I think she just needs to know it for herself as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, sure, she'll bring it to Ajani because they're friends and it's important and he needs to know, but...
Well, and he was the one who said, this is your home, you know? And...
Yeah, but I think, like, that's like 20% of her motivation. I feel like the other 80% is, like, she needs to know so that she can try to stop Phyrexia and just learn as much information as she possibly can. But that's just me. That's how I feel. I wanted to talk about, we talked about Elspeth delivering, making a delivery. Not the dead drop, but like an actual package.
It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
There were people discussing about this story that, not this story in particular, but the Streets of New Capenna stories, that there was no pizza. And that people were upset by the fact that there was no pizza. Or
Pizzagate, you know?
No, I don't know. That's Washington, D.C. This is New York. So no, I don't know.
It was just a criminal thing with pizza, so...
I will say...
I wasn't trying to take it that far.
I will say, as New Yorkers ourselves, if you're unfamiliar, we are currently in New York. We grew up in New York. We have lived here our whole lives.
Yes. Not New York City, but New York.
No. Well, yeah. Sorry. Yes. As we have unfortunately learned a lot recently, many people, when they hear New York, assume New York City. No, New York's a big old state. If you look at where New York City is versus where New York is, there's a big old difference. But we've been to the city many times. We lived relatively close to it. But regardless, as New Yorkers ourselves, we know many people who have moved away from the state, and when they come back to visit, the thing they want is like, I want pizza. Because when I'm in that other state, the one person I'm thinking of off the top of my head lived in Maryland or Virginia, or moved to Maryland or Virginia. And every time he came home, he's like, I need pizza. Like this, Maryland and Virginia cannot do pizza like New York can do pizza. And that's from his mouth, not necessarily mine, but Yeah. So New York is definitely known for its pizza. Chicago, at me, I guess, if you want to. I've genuinely never had Chicago deep dish. I would love to try it someday. But I do love New York pizza. So yeah, definitely understand that, like, it's different other places I've heard, and I love me some New York pizza. But the delivery, how we got on that discussion, the delivery that Elspeth was making, it was a parcel in a satchel, which, fancy words aside, Elspeth states that she is purposefully not looking at what it is. Like, she doesn't care. She's just making the delivery and moving on with her life. But she talked about, like, going around the city and, like, holding this satchel very close to her and, like, looking around because she was sure that somebody was going to take her down. Now, or, like, come after her or whatever. I mentioned to Amy, made me think of a situation when I was in college and I was dealing with my student loans. Boo, student loans, boo. Anyway.
Everyone has them, everyone hates them.
When I was dealing with my student loans, there was something that had happened where they had, I think somebody had, like, overpaid the student loans back. And so there was a credit on my account. And because my parents were helping me out for college, there was a check that was going to be given to me that I needed to bring back to give to my parents. And the check was for like $3,000. And I went to the Student Business Center and collect this check. And I said, this is my name. I'm here to pick this up. And the person's like, oh, let me go check. And they go back and they come back and they find the check. Now, the person who's giving me the check, I don't know who they are. I'm not about to shout them out or like rag on them or whatever. But I distinctly remember they looked at the check, saw the amount of money on the check, looked at me, and they were like, why are we giving you this money? And I remember, not even that. I was pissed. I'm like, does it have my name on it? Then give it to me. Like, I didn't do anything that I wasn't supposed to be doing. It's not yours. Give me the money. But I will say I 100% related to Elspeth when I was reading this story, because when I had that check for $3,000 in my pocket that nobody knew that I had, there was that one person at the business center and they were staying there when I walked away. They didn't, couldn't tell you if I had ever seen them before that moment or if I ever saw them after that moment in my life. But I still was like, looking over my shoulder everywhere that I went, making sure that my hand was in the pocket with the check so that it didn't fall out, so that nobody grabbed it out of there. There's no way anybody had any knowledge whatsoever that...
I mean, they did once they saw how sketchy you were being. I'm like, look at this idiot.
I'm like Elspeth.
He's really babying that pocket.
Nope.
I bet he's got something good in there.
I'm like Elspeth. I just had that skill, no questions asked. Yeah, it really was like one of the most nerve-wracking things of like, I have a lot of money on me right now. Like, it's not, stacks of cash or anything, but still, it's like, this is very stressful. So yeah, I definitely get Elspeth like clutching that satchel close to her. She doesn't even know what she's carrying, but she's still just like, this is really important. I have to like not mess this up. And me and you, Elspeth, I get it.
There was a baby in there. Pretend it's a baby.
Oh, I was like, do you actually think there was a baby in there? Because it was a sealed parcel. Pretend it's a baby. That's fair. I also wanted to point out, I thought it was interesting in the story, we find out about Xander, right? Xander walks around with a cane. Xander's a vampire. They talk about like Xander has a knee problem, right? He's like favoring his knee. When he stands up, he walks with a cane. We heard from...
Imagine chronic pain that lasts forever because you're immortal. Ugh.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah, good call. Or, excuse me, wow. Or the, wow. Or the Cabaretti leader. I'm not going to remember his name off the top of my head. I'm sure we will learn it over time. You're welcome to leave it in the comments if you'd like. But the leader of the Cabaretti, like, his underling like called him an old man, right? Like, you know, he's the grandpa or whatever.
Right.
So like it's clear, and the story is making it clear that these mob leaders are getting on in years, right? They are kind of the Marlon Brando Godfather sitting in the chair of like, you come to me asking me, you know, whatever. Like they're not like young men running around being assassins like Angelo, right? They're older guys sitting back and reaping the rewards of their criminal empire, I suppose, but not really because all this stuff is about to happen. But it kind of shows those cracks a little bit.
Right.
Right? It shows like these are not perfect people. They're not the epitome as a leader, right? They're not the picture of health. They're old, they're beaten up, they're on in years, they're weathered, whatever. So I found that interesting. And then he also mentioned like that he doesn't have all of his memories still because of one, time passing, but two, something about signing that contract way back when to have the 5 families be the ones in control, and seemingly all of them gaining some aspect of demonism or, you know, demonic nature added to their nature, that messed with their brains, or at least Xander's. I don't know if it messed with everybody else's, but presumably it did. So that's interesting. There has definitely been some deals with some demons that we have heard about in Magic's history that, depending on how you think about it, may or may not have gone well for the individuals who signed those deals and or the people who were friends with the individuals who signed those deals. Gideon! And that didn't work out too well for everybody involved.
Oh.
This story gave us the first instance of somebody consuming Halo. Consuming Halo where we then hear about the actual benefits gifted from the substance, as opposed to just, you know, people imbibing on it for the hell of it. Like, you actually hear from Elspeth about, like, the effect of it and how it makes her feel and etc.
Yeah, and I liked that description because it was very right along the lines of, you know, when someone tries drugs for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, what the types of things that they'll experience.
Yeah.
That will make them decide to continue to do them.
Yeah. The last thing that I wanted to talk about for this story is Vivian. Vivian only has one art in this set from what we've seen, and it's her Planeswalker art for the card. And we know that from the first story that, to a degree, whether she's doing it as like a double agent or just like Elspeth is doing just to gather information or whatever, that's fine. But we know that she's working with Tezzeret. She's working with the Phyrexians in some capacity. When she meets Elspeth, they kind of both size each other up without saying a word about it. They both size each other up as Planeswalkers. Vivian mentions the Gatewatch, like asking about it. She's like, are you doing this for the Gatewatch? Like, is that why you're gathering this information or whatever? First of all, I want to know how Vivian ended up in that place while helping Tezzeret and the Phyrexians.
Right.
And or the Phyrexians. Like, did they give her a tip that, like, a dead drop was possibly... Like, why would they have that information? And why would they care? The other thing that I was curious about was Vivian asking about the Gatewatch because she had learned about them on Ravnica with War of the Spark, and so was just like, oh, well, you're a Planeswalker, you're looking to gather this information, you're probably doing it for the Gatewatch.
Right.
Or is it like what happened with poor Tamio? Tezzeret made her aware of his plans, the Phyrexians' plans, and is like, the Gatewatch are going to be our biggest threat to this plan. And so Vivian is kind of sizing Elspeth up and saying, you doing this for the Gatewatch? So that Vivian can know if Elspeth is a threat or not from the Gatewatch. So at first it just seemed kind of innocent. It was like, oh, Vivian's there. She called her out. Like, they had this little back and forth, and that was the end of it. But when you actually stop to think about it, it's like, is Vivian, like, acting as a villain here, or was she really just like asking the question because it was like, you know, nudge, nudge, don't forget, Vivian knows about the Gatewatch, like...
Yeah. Well, maybe it was also a kind of thing like, I feel like this person's a planeswalker, but maybe they're not, so I'm going to ask them about the Gatewatch, which is like off in another area and kind of inert, and they might not know what it is.
Right.
If if they're not a planeswalker, or they're not having any kind of affiliation with the Gatewatch, if I bring it up, they'll be like, what's that? So it won't matter that I brought it up because they're gonna not know what it is. Or if they do know what it is, then it means they're in the Gatewatch.
Yeah.
Or if they haven't taken the oath, at least they've decided to help.
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are as well. Like, what do you think? Do you think it was just a pure coincidence? Do you think she actually is trying to gather information for Tezzeret and or the Phyrexians, Urabrask, for example, since we know that he is the Phyrexian from the set? Whatever the case may be, we would love to hear from you about anything, really, that we talked about in the comments down below. Please don't Please don't forget, I don't think I mentioned it earlier. I said we stream Monday and Friday. Monday is MTG Arena. Friday, so this past Friday, when we were at the pre-release, we did not stream. But every other Friday, when we're not pre-releasing, we stream from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, whatever video game we happen to be playing at the time. And we are nearing the end of X-Men Legends 2, Rise of Apocalypse on the PlayStation 2. It's not necessarily the finale this week. In fact, I doubt it, but you should stay tuned anyway and come join us on these streams. Most of the time, we don't actually talk about the game. We talk about whatever topics y'all feel like talking about. Right. So the past time that we were streaming X-Men Legends 2, we talked about cookies the whole time. So whatever we end up talking about based on what you all bring up in chat, we would love to have you join us. Bring up a topic. Let's talk about it. So, like I said, subbing, ringing the bell, gets you those notifications for this channel, for Video Games for All, for Gluten Free for All. Those will be popping up on the screen so you can subscribe to them. They're also linked down in the description box below. Any and all of those things. And please do not forget to join us for the early access stream at any point in the day that you want on Tuesday the 26th after 11 a.m. Eastern until whenever we cannot keep our eyes open anymore. It will probably be 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m., something like that, Eastern time. We would love to have you join us for any and all of that you can. But that is going to be the end of this particular episode. I really want to thank you all for watching, and I want to say that we discuss characterization of these people. Like, you know, looking at this story and saying, well, Elspeth is doing X, Y, and Z. Can she do those things?
Right.
As opposed to just sitting back, reading the story and going, yep, that's right, she did it all, good for her. Like, actually being able to question it and say, okay, what in her life gave her this ability to do these things? Is there something new? Is this just mischaracterization? Whatever. I think that that is a great way for all of you to join us as we show off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
That's right. Thank you all so very much for being here. I really hope you're enjoying anything and everything that we're doing here on this Geek for All family of channels. It's gonna feel so good to get back to that early access event. I am very, very excited for it.
Me too.
So thank you to Wizards for trusting us once again with this this account that you have gifted us. And good luck to all the other streamers, because it should be a blast. I hope everybody treats it with the same respect that it deserves.
Right.
But for now, from us here at this Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.